The very first morning after I moved into what I thought was my dream home, I woke up to chaos, shouts, splashes, and laughter so loud it shook me out of sleep. I walked into my backyard expecting peace, but instead my private pool had been hijacked. 3 women were lounging on my chairs like they owned the place, floats bouncing in the water, and at the center of it all was Karen. That moment when her smug face turned to me and she asked, "Who are you?" That was the day I realized my biggest nightmare had only just begun. I had saved for years, scraping every dollar to buy this home. It wasn't a mansion, but it had something I'd always wanted: a pool tucked away in the back, my own sanctuary. I imagined quiet mornings with coffee by the water, evenings floating under the stars. That vision lasted exactly one night. Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood, decided my property was her playground. She strutted around in her sun hat and oversized sunglasses like she was auditioning for HOA Dictator of the Year. When I told her firmly she needed to leave, she barely even looked at me. "I wasn't told this house was sold," she sneered, claiming she had connections with the realtor. I repeated myself, told her in no uncertain terms, this was my home, my pool, and she wasn't welcome. She smiled that tight little smile and muttered, "We'll see about that." I wish I'd known then how serious she was. That night I sat on my couch staring out at the pool, wondering if I'd made a mistake buying here. The way she said it like a promise haunted me. And sure enough, the days that followed proved I wasn't paranoid. I installed cameras covering every angle of the yard. I posted big yellow "no trespassing" signs on the fence. I thought maybe, just maybe, that would make her back off. But Karen doesn't follow rules. She bends them, ignores them, rewrites them in her own favor. Every time I left for work, she came back. Sometimes alone, stretched out on my chair like she was tanning on a cruise deck. Other times with friends blasting music, bringing snacks, even dragging in a giant inflatable swan I'd never seen before. It drove me crazy because I couldn't figure out how she was getting in. No broken locks, no damage. That's when it hit me. She had a spare key, probably cloned from the previous owner. The thought made my stomach twist. She had prepared for this like she'd decided long before that my pool belonged to her. So I did the reasonable thing. I went to the HOA president. I explained everything, showed him the footage, asked for help. His response, a shrug. Turns out he and Karen were close. Too close. The second I saw that fake sympathy on his face, I knew I was on my own. That night, sitting in my living room with the cameras rolling, I felt it sink in. I was fighting this war alone. I couldn't rely on the HOA, couldn't expect backup. And for the first time, I seriously thought about giving up. Selling the house, packing it all in and walking away from the nightmare. I stared out at the pool, my dream, my pride, and wondered if I'd been naive. Maybe Karen was right. Maybe in this neighborhood I didn't belong. That thought sat in my chest like a rock. I even caught myself asking, am I the problem here? Did I pick the wrong fight? But then something snapped. Maybe it was pride, maybe stubbornness, maybe just plain survival instinct. I wasn't about to lose my sanctuary to a bully, and that's when the turning point came. Reviewing the footage, I noticed Karen had a ritual. Every single time before she got in the pool, she slathered herself with this expensive sunscreen, rubbing it in like armor. That's when an idea sparked. I called up my buddy, he's a chemist, and explained the situation. I told him about Karen's entitlement, her endless trespassing, her obsession with appearances. He laughed, then said, "I think I've got something for you." A few days later, he handed me a sealed container, told me it was harmless to anyone else, but would react dramatically with that specific brand of sunscreen. I tested it in a bucket, added the chemical, dropped in a dab of her sunscreen. Minutes later, the water turned a sickly shade of green. Even the skin beneath it glowed. I couldn't stop grinning. Finally, I had a plan. The next Saturday was perfect. Sun-blazing sky, spotless, the kind of day Karen couldn't resist. I cleaned the pool until it looked like a magazine cover, crystal clear, practically begging her to dive in. I poured in the chemical with precision, stirred it through, and waited. Around noon, my phone buzzed motion alert. I pulled up the live feed, and there they were. Karen and her two sidekicks, sunscreen shining on their skin. She strutted across my deck, threw her hat on the chair, kicked off her sandals, and dove right in like she was Queen of Atlantis. Her friends followed, splashing, laughing, oblivious. For a few minutes it was normal. And then, it wasn't. Karen froze mid-swim, staring at her arms. Her eyes went wide and she let out a scream that cut through the air. Green blotches were spreading fast across her arms, shoulders, face. Her friends noticed, checked their own skin, and the pool exploded with shrieks. They scrambled to the edge, slipping, tripping over each other, smearing green water across my deck. Karen clawed for her phone, recording herself while screaming, "He poisoned me." She posted it expecting sympathy. But the internet is merciless. Within hours, her rant turned into a meme storm. My favorite, someone dubbed her the Incredible Sulk. By the time I got home, the neighborhood had gathered. Karen was pacing my driveway, blotched green like a swamp creature, screaming that I'd pay, that she'd sue me into the ground. Her friends tried to hide behind her, still streaked green themselves. Across the street, neighbors filmed openly, laughing. Even the HOA president showed up, probably hoping to control the fallout, but Karen was unstoppable, ranting about lawsuits, chemical burns, even declaring she'd take my house once she won in court. I just smiled, pulled out my phone and said, "Smile for the camera, Karen." 2 days later, she marched into the police station raving about chemical assault and attempted murder. The officers had already seen the videos, the memes, the neighborhood footage, my security recordings. They reviewed everything, saw the trespassing, saw her admit on tape that she used my pool without permission. They confirmed the chemical was perfectly safe, a commercially approved additive that only reacted to her sunscreen. Case closed. Karen's reputation didn't survive the fallout. The HOA distanced themselves fast, pretending they hadn't been protecting her all along. But the damage was done. People called her Shrek's cousin at the grocery store. Kids laughed behind her back. Even weeks later, you could still see faint green stains on her elbows. She stopped going near my pool entirely. And me, I finally got the backyard I'd dreamed of. One evening, I floated in the water, drink in hand, watching the sun dip low. I replayed the image of Karen's face when she first saw the green spreading across her skin. For the first time since moving in, I felt at peace. Justice hadn't just been served, it had been served poolside with a side of humiliation. Sometimes the only way to deal with a bully is to remind them that boundaries exist, and mine was painted bright green.